Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SoccerBeat podcast. We're talking Kaizer Chiefs, doing our match reaction of a 1-1 home draw against Marumo Gallants. I've got Coach Farouk and Tsepo Masilela with me. Just before we crack on, guys, please hit that subscribe button and the like button if you're enjoying what we're doing, and put a comment what you'd like us to do podcasts on, and please share the podcast. The likes and the shares make a big difference to the visibility. Okay, gents. So a 1-1 draw. So not the best little run of form for Chiefs, 2 defeats and now a draw. I'm going to start straight off with you, Coach. The biggest talking point of Chiefs for this game was they changed formation. So even though they were in Angola and they only had maybe a little bit of training time, they switched to a back three and basically brought in an extra defender and left out an attacking player. Did the formation change work, first and foremost? And why do you think they actually changed shape so with such a quick turnaround between games?
Well, I think it's just not the formation that changed. They changed the personnel to a large extent as well. Bringing in Posler and looking at Marco as a wing back. When you play with wing backs, then obviously they have to have the pace and the energy to be able to go up and come back at X speed. And I think to some extent it is an experiment, if you want to call it, that the coaches tried. Nothing wrong with it. Sometimes coaches think of doing something different. And in some moments, it looked good. At some moments, Chiefs looked like they were in control with possession. They played some nice passing patterns, but they never dominated the game. They scored, I think, a very, I would say, an opportunistic goal in that the reaction of Dupuis was very good. And Mayo as well, I was very happy that Mayo scored. He's a type of player that will get into areas in the box, and if you give him half a chance, he will bury. But overall, I think they lacked the ability to manage the lead, and thereafter, having had a penalty, which I think was fortuitous, we could see clearly that penalty was a gift, which they didn't take with both hands. A player is falling down. How else can he put his arm anywhere else? But you can't blame Chiefs for that. The referee got it wrong. But again, you give it to somebody who hasn't been effective in taking penalties. He's missed a couple just before this one. Why not give it to somebody that could? In the past, Miguel was the go-to guy for penalties. He's also missed a few, but it seems that they didn't take the advantage of getting all 3 points today. Many a times, Marumo is a team that are careless in possession. So that favors a team like Chiefs who play very effectively on transition. But we didn't see that. A lot of miscued passes, a lot of poor finishes, which I think is something at this stage in the season that should be remedied. They should do better. I don't mind players missing, but if you have 6 or 7 or 8 chances, at least bury one of them.
Tsepo, coach is a bit on the fence. He liked parts of the formation, maybe some parts not so much. But what do you make of the change of shape? Do you think it worked as well? And yes, I think let's leave the penalty out because I think we can all agree it was a bit lucky. And if they buried it, they probably would have won the game, but they might not have deserved that 2-0 lead. So let's leave that out. Do you think the formation change actually worked? What's behind a change like that? Against a Marumo team, they don't play with maybe 2 big strikers where you need your 3 physical centre-backs. They play with a false 9 and, Ndlondlo's playing up there. So your 3 centre-backs don't really have anyone to mark. It can be quite difficult with a back 3 against no focal point. What was your thinking on the shape?
In my opinion, I don't agree with the change of shape in today's game. You're playing at home. You want to be on the front foot. And again, with changing of shapes or formation, it's informed by the players you have. Do you have the players to play that system? I feel like if you cannot get much creativity from the inside, you need wing backs that are aggressive, that can finish off action. If it's a cross from the right, you need a Marco in the box to add numbers. But I didn't see that. And also, again, when you have Dupuis playing more as a 10 with Sereno, Dupuis is not a player that can play in pockets or in tight spaces. He relies on pace. So why have a Dupuis there in this formation? To me, it was confusing. It's better to have him do in those positions. He's the type of player, nippy player. He knows how to play in tight spaces. But for me, man, the formation was a no-no. I think that formation, you first score goals and you finish by changing to that formation to close shops. You don't first close shops, and because to be honest, Chiefs didn't create many chances in open play. Even the goal, well done to Mayo. We want a striker to score. He got his first goal, but they were not creating. They are not effective in the final third. And lastly, man, I'm confused. Where are the strikers? They ended up with no striker in the field. They had to switch Lilipo, but they signed strikers. You'd want to see a Silva replacing a Mayo. I'm not sure where's the Gadoro. Maybe it's paperwork or what, but where's the strikers when you want to win the game? It's 1-1. Bring on the strikers.
No, so I think Iguodaro is still injured, but I think you're right that Chiefs in a previous game, they got in front and then they brought Cross on to protect the lead. That makes a lot more sense. Also, it brings extra height if you need to defend these set pieces where maybe they don't always have the height in the back four when McCarthy and Mark are there. But yeah, let's talk about Mayo. Coach touched on him. He scored a nice poacher's goal. Only didn't last that long, just under an hour, which you can understand. But what do you make of his overall game? Let's start with Tsepo on this one. And I just want to ask and just follow up on that striker point you make. Flavio da Silva, he hasn't been playing full games. He's been playing 60s, 60-minute outing. So he should be fresh. You don't bring him on at 1-1. I mean, with Chiefs basically just settling for a point here. It does seem that way. Like, why not bring on the striker and try to nick the win?
It seemed like they were settling for a point to me, also with that system and having a player like Mtetwa, in front of them. You're having a lot of defensive players, defensive-minded players. But with Mayo, the only, I can say well done for the goal, but the performance was not, he didn't look sharp. To sum it up, he didn't look sharp. And again, new team, new teammates, maybe, the goal also will boost his confidence going forward. But he didn't look sharp. The touches, for me, look a bit rusty. Maybe he needs more game time. But, a striker needs a goal, and it's got the goal. If they kept it clean at the back, they win 1-0. We say, well done to Mayo,
Yeah, fair enough, Coach. If he scores that goal, it gives him something to protect with that formation. So on another day, Chiefs might have, clung on for a win. Maybe not the most pretty win, but Mayo can do that. He can get you in front, and then you have something to hold on to, which seems to suit this Chiefs team a bit more than maybe playing expansively. What do you make of his performance? And I mean, I was a bit disappointed that we didn't maybe see Da Silva come on next to him, try and kill the game off, or actually just to see the two of them together, to have actually two strikers. The Chiefs have so many strikers. They've got Dupree, Duba, Iguodaro, Winford, Da Silva, Bartman, Mayo. So they could easily play with two up. You suggested a diamond before, but it could be maybe a 3-5-2 with a 10 behind two strikers. What do you make of Mayo and the general sort of first sightings of him in a Chiefs shirt?
I think for his start, it's okay. You score a goal, you don't really mind the performance overall, because I think as time goes, he will get used to the style of play. You get used to the tactics as well. But I think more so, we emphasizing on the formation, and I think there's no formation that beats a game. I think it's more important the players that make the formation effective. I think if you look at the fact that they had a midfield that didn't have creativity, they had no telepathy. We started with two very similar players in Tsepo and Lobo. So you lacked a bit of creativity. And when you play with wingbacks, you need creative players to ensure that they keep the ball long enough to get those players in positions where they can use the width very effectively. That wasn't the case. I think also for me, Lilipo could have been a better option than Mako on the side, because we know, even though Frostley doesn't look as sharp, he did get around the opposition's defense on a number of occasions in the game, especially in the second half. Unfortunately, those cutbacks didn't land in areas where they could have hurt Marumo Gallants. So I think where I would say the coaches got it wrong is not so much the formation per se, because I think whether you play with 4 or 3 or at the back, even if you play with 4, your wing backs, we did obviously attack, which you need you with 2 at the back. And I think what Tsepo is saying is you can't have 3 guys sitting back and then you have a team that comes from deep with numbers, with those small passes. They don't have a big man up front. So I think the coaches really try to tweak the team, but to an extent where they make too many changes. I think too many changes. If you look at the last performance, even though they had lost, I do think that they should have been a little bit more patient. They shouldn't have made the changes, because you take a Mako from a left back position, now you're pushing him more forward. Does he have the skill to minus defenders? I don't think he has that. I mean, he hasn't got the explosivity and the finesse to beat his opponent. So when you have a Lelepo with its pace, he's possibly a better option. I think also Shaba was kept on the bench for too long. Yeah, they waited in the second half to make those subs. And I think overall, it's again a case of what we saw last season. There's no certainty in who's the starting lineup. It's a constant change from one week to the next. Now you look at this draw. Now suddenly the coaches say, but I think we must give somebody else a chance. You don't just give people a chance. You give players an opportunity based on performance and based on the fact that the opposition determine your tactical approach. When you play a Gallant, you plan accordingly. When you play a Sundowns, you plan accordingly. And I think that is the missing aspect that we find now with this technical team, in that they're now taking over from Nabi, and they also under tremendous pressure now. So, when you're under pressure, you sometimes don't make the right decisions. You make emotional decisions. And I think today, clearly it was a case of emotional decisions.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. The coaches obviously want to take this opportunity as to be the main man. Maybe they felt, let's play safe. Let's make sure we be more solid. We could try and nick a 1-0 win. But Chiefs at home against Gallants, yeah, they probably had to try and push harder to try and win the game overall. Coach, you touched on Frostley. He got forward a lot, but after the Sekakuna game, where I thought he played okay, some supporters were very vocal in the comments saying they thought Froster had a poor game. And today, of course, it was him that was cut inside for the winner. I mean, he did not really taking his chances with Monyane out. And honestly, if Monyane had been fit in the last 3 fixtures, the team looked so much more balanced defensively with the way he was stopping counters and also the way he was joining up with Lelepo. So a huge miss there, coach, to be without Monyane, and Frostler not taking his chance as a defender. Just letting a right-footed player come inside so easily was a bit, it cost Chiefs 2 points, really.
Yeah, I think, defenders, their first job is always defending. And as much as we enjoyed the fact that he went forward and made those cutbacks, I think defensively, you're dealing with a right-footed player. You don't allow him to come onto his stronger foot and bend the ball the way the attacker Clifford did there. You should ensure that your body shape is such where you force him onto, you pressurize him on his stronger foot and force him to either pass or make an inappropriate or inaccurate shot. I think he was guilty of poor defending there. And I think, it cost them 2 points. He's poor defending in that moment in time. So yeah, I'm certain when Onyani is fit, he will take that role. But I also think a team like Chiefs shouldn't just have one option in that position. You have a Solomon's on the bench, irrespective of Solomon's indeficiencies or deficiencies for that matter. He gives them a lot of pace as well, and he's a gritty player. He's quick, he's dynamic. He's difficult to play against. He's in your face all the time. So maybe the coaches could have looked at him coming in maybe as an option. They made changes in areas. Yes, for me, Sereno didn't do too much. He was also a bit of a disappointment besides the penalty. But other than that, you're needing bring in a player who can give you some work, some crosses in. I didn't see that with Dupree. Dupree seemed to have played much more narrower because of the fact that you had Frosler playing as a wingback and Marco playing as a wingback. So yeah, I think Frosler, it doesn't look sharp enough. I don't know what it is. Is recovering from an injury or is it just his poor form? I can't say.
Tsepo, let's finish off with you. Chiefs only had 1 shot on target in the second half when they were trying to chase the game. They've been. I saw in a podcast we spoke earlier this season. You said that big teams have players coming off the bench to win you these games. They didn't have Vilakazi, who's on under 20 duty. Sereno started, so he couldn't come on as a sub, and they left Flavio de Silva on the bench. And Lelepo didn't really do a whole lot of this off the bench either, besides one quite strong run where he got taken down. Whereas Gallants, one of their subs scored, another sub assisted a goal. How much of a concern is that? Chiefs have this big squad. They've got all these attacking options. They've got quite a few wingers. They've got a lot of strikers. And none of them come on and really took their chance in this game to actually change the game. They didn't even look ready to maybe have an impact. How did you see that?
No, it's a big concern, and looking at the upcoming fixture, they are a goal down. They need goals, So if they don't attack, they don't create, they don't score, it means they're going home. But it's a big. They should also revisit and check what was working. In the first 5 games where they were not conceding. They should also, you look at that. Your players, how because the bench was helping them, but they kept Sereno for the second half, and it was working for them. So they should also, maybe they should revisit and check. And let me tell you, the coaches, I don't know what they're doing. It's caretaker coaches or what. But if they lose on weekend, now the pressure switches up. We're not talking Nabi, it's them on the bench now. So their heads are on the block. So they also need to know they are not on holiday because Nabi just left. It's a game of results, Grant.
Yeah, I just want to touch. I just like to touch one point before we go. I think, when you have a player of the caliber of Mayo who hasn't been that active, at this club before he made the transition to Chiefs, you bring him off the bench rather than starting. You start with a player that has been tried and tested because now, yes, he scored. But if you want to bring on a player that is just signed, I think in Mayo's case, a player that was inactive, maybe a good option would be to start him on the bench and bring him on later in the game.
Yeah, I think it's fair. And then Mayo would have been on at the end of the game when you're chasing a goal, and he's the best natural maybe finisher. So he's the most likely to nick a goal to help you win. Guys, not the best result for Chiefs. Hopefully they can get through against Cowboys Corp on the weekend. They do have some fresh legs for that game now because of all the rotation they've done. Let's see how that pans out. If they exit the CAF Champions League, they might be looking for a new coach maybe quicker than they may be planned.